Hey, what's up, guys? Trigger Wolf here, and I found another one of these weird anti-violence article things, I think. I don't even know. It's like this guy's just... He doesn't know what NPCs are for. It's kind of strange, to be honest. Let's go ahead and start this thing. First thing it says is, oh shit, I pressed the wrong button to kill that guy. Wow, you're just pretty bad at video games, aren't you? It happens to the best of us. You could be playing Watch Dogs 2 for days without firing a gun or causing a fatal traffic accident or beating someone to death with a billiard ball. That's oddly specific. Yeah, and it's super great that you can do that in a sandbox, isn't it? Lead character Marcus Holloway doesn't seem like the kind of person who'd leave bodies in his wake, and the ease with which he can become a killer is jarring. Like so many of our protagonists, he walks through life with the safety off and his finger on the trigger. Open world games, particularly those with the urban variety, have a violence problem, and it's a mechanical rather than philosophical. You know, I feel like I covered this exact same thing somewhere else before. Like, this isn't even a unique thought. You just took this idea from the guy who made that stupid Deus Ex article that I covered, and then adapted it to Watch Dogs 2. You know, you can actually click on this card at the top right of the screen to see what I'm talking about. Killing a person isn't a decision to be taken lightly, but it is one of your character's default actions. No, it's likely one of your default actions. Like you said earlier, you can play the game for days without killing anyone. If your character killed someone, it's probably because you made the decision. If not outright murder, you might accidentally punch someone in the face rather than emoting in their general direction if you press the wrong key at the wrong time. Yeah, that's what I call fumbling the controller, and it usually happens when you're not familiar with it. Control schemes these days tend to be pretty universal for all games to minimize this fumbling. Every shooter nowadays has the same buttons. L2 for aim, R2 to shoot, X to jump, square to reload, etc. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it sounds like you have no real experience playing video games, at least not modern games. Drive through almost any open world city, or even sprint through one in Assassin's Creed, and you might be kind to the crowds at first. Actually, you know, in Assassin's Creed, you're discouraged from killing civilians. It actively game overs you if you do it so many times. Now that I think about it. I spent my first few hours in Watch Dogs 2 following the rules of the road, enjoying the way that the game generates little road rage incidents and accidents through its simulation, but even I resorted to using the packed sidewalks as shortcuts. The people who were scattered like ragdolls weren't real. They'd respawn with a new face, with a few basic threads of identity, and become part of the mass again. Yeah, you made the decision to quit being a perfect civilian and you murdered some pixels. You're a horrible human being. Death doesn't matter until a cutscene tells us that it matters. Yeah, much like any action movie. It's almost like Ubisoft wanted you to be part of a thriller action movie. That's strange, right? Ubisoft's hack and smash game isn't alone in struggling to fit its characters and story into a freewheeling, chaotic sandbox. But by placing its focus on a different kind of criminal in a different kind of setting, the ease with which it can switch between calm and a killing spree is even more tonally damaging than in a Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption. Tonally damaging? You're not watching a perfectly paced action movie. It's a video game. Fun should be the first and foremost important thing. Which, by the way, is the reason I consider Ubisoft to be a failure. They forget that fun should be a factor in their game just to appease people like you. And then, you still shit all over their games. So fuck you. Even GTA's rogue gallery of anti-heroes don't glide through the carnage unblemished. I never bought early game Nico Bellic as a casual killer of bystanders, and what character arc he has is torn to shreds if the player doesn't care about the body count of innocents. What are you asking the devs to do here? Should it game over every time you kill a random NPC? Should it game over if you get into a fender bender with some random guy? Ultimately, Nico's body count is whatever you decide it to be. I often spend more time deliberating over my clothes and haircut in these games than I do about mounting the pavement and obliterating a jogger. A haircut costs money and I have to live with it, at least for a while. But that jogger is barely a blip on the commute between one mission to the next, a speed bump at best. Yeah, and should I feel bad about a random NPC number 11364 dying? Should the devs program a funeral for them and every NPC you've ever killed? More importantly, would you go to them? And how quickly will you get sick of them before you write another blog post bitching about how the devs took control away from you just so you can sit through your 1000th funeral? The fact of the matter is, that jogger, the random NPCs in cars or walking along the sidewalk or sitting down and chatting on the phone are set dressings. They exist to make the set, aka the city, feel alive and real. These games would feel dead and boring as shit if the NPCs didn't exist. It would feel a lot like The Division. There are a lot of ways to incorporate the absurdity of the easy kill into the game. The Saints Row series, at its best, recognizes how ludicrous this genre can be. In the fourth game, you're sometimes killing evil aliens or simulated memories rather than actual people. And even when your actions result in a civilian loss, hey, you're a gangster president. It's fine. You live in a very silly world. Holy shit, it's almost like the devs wanted you to have fun with the same tools. Life and limb are cheaper in a silly world. It's why the violence of Looney Tunes isn't as upsetting as a single frame of Watership Down, and why we laugh at Laurel and Hardy. I don't know who that is. And Ash versus the Evil Dead. I like that show. Even when violence is the inevitable end to every situation. Most games have more in common with action films than the slapstick, though, and no matter how many crime shows cast their influence on GTA, beyond its script, the action, moment-by-moment experience of the game fits with other genres and scenarios. I don't really know what that last sentence is supposed to mean, but everything else, GTA is supposed to feel like a dramatic action crime movie. That's the point. The much maligned destruction of Central Metropolis in Man of Steel is a game-like sequence. The disregard of the assumed inhabitants of the toppling buildings identify them as NPC types, like so many of the doomed crowns in disaster films. Jurassic World has a sequence in which the park visitors are being massacred while the lead couple take time out to have a romantic moment in their midst. The camera shows us the horror, but seems to hope that we'll forget about it as soon as the shot switches to the heroes, safe in the center of the carnage. Those visitors in the park and the people in Metropolis aren't real. Yeah. They're background noise. Nobody will mourn them, and they'll respawn if they're needed for another set piece down the line. Yes, because they are set dressing. Their primary function is to fill a scene and make it feel more alive. And from a movie standpoint, the reason why we're shown this destruction in these Superman movies is to show how much power Superman actually has and uses, and the consequences of his actions. Depending on the DC universe, the entire Justice League agrees that Superman is too much of a Boy Scout to a fault, that it can be detrimental to the entirety of the team. In the end, Superman knows that every step he takes can create an earthquake, and every breath he takes can cause a hurricane. Deaths of the civilian actively hurts Superman. It is a constant reminder to him that he is a god amongst mortal men, and that he is not capable of helping and saving everyone. You are supposed to say, holy shit, thousands of people are dead, and then impart some of the blame on Superman and his enemy. The ease with which the population of an open-world city can be killed perhaps has more to do with the way the simulation of the city works than any higher-level decision by the character or setting. What easier way is there to trigger police response than by firing a gun on a busy street, like what can happen in real life, and what else is there to do on those busy streets other than car chases and shootouts? For all of their detail, these worlds are still placed for pursuit and combat, giant elaborate mazes and arenas. If you want to cause a ripple, you have to throw a stone, and the life of the city can be a little lifeless at times until you start dealing death. If you want to see the wonderfully intricate emergent scenarios that can play out, you often have to nudge the pieces in play rather aggressively. You're the kid tapping on the glass and then shaking the ant farm to get a reaction. Yes, because it's a video game and it's meant to be interactive. It's not a movie, it's not a passive form of entertainment. RPGs have been exploring ways to make non-violent options interesting since the early days of the Ultima series, and the dialogue options of Pillars of Eternity and the like are try to ensure that swordplay isn't the default option. Credit should be given to Fallout 4 as well. I didn't enjoy the implementation of the settlement buildings and the management, but it is at least an attempt to follow for the creation of a community rather than conflict, a way to imprint your own meaning on a world without a nuke or a gun. Listen, I used to play a lot of Skyrim. There's a lot of endless and meaningless walking in Skyrim. If there's nothing to do between place A and destination B, the game would be boring as fuck. I'd likely have quit playing the game if there wasn't something to hunt or mine or herbalize or something, and the game devs know this. Guess what they filled the games with in between those spaces? Did you guess NPCs? You'd be right. It's not just that I'd like alternatives to guns and fists though, it's that I'd like the decision to have a little bit more weight. As long as the shoot button is next to the talk and jump button, and it often sits on the left mouse button, which is as front and center as the button can get, it'll seem like the second nature to pull that trigger. That makes sense if you're running around a hostile post-war wasteland, but if you're an activist hacker, it seems strange to be eager for the kill. And even a hardened or hardening criminal would be daft to attract attention by leaving a trail of bodies on the way to the next heist. See, I spoke earlier about universal control schemes and to minimize fumbling and accidental button presses across all games. They do this to minimize the learning curve of all games, allowing you to just jump in and have fun. If your issue is that the left mouse button equals fire weapon, why don't you just rebind the keys? Or maybe just use a controller and simplify the actions. Did you know that you can do that? Did you know you can rebind the keys? Bind the fire key way out of the way so you have to make a conscious effort when you want to kill somebody. Problem solved. Quit bitching. What is a default button for if not to rattle the ant farm though? I remember being amused by Red Dead Redemption, including a button for greeting people with the tip of the hat, and Watch Dogs 2 lets you pet the dogs that you encounter in parks. Those lovely little flourishes, character building and pleasant, and they're not a replacement for a more direct engagement with the world. Let me let you in on a little secret. It's fluff. Petting the dog does not actually add to your character, like at all. In gunless games, particularly walking simulators like Gone Home and the like, the default action by the player character sometimes picks up items in the world, or functions like a look command in an old point and click, providing extra detail. There's rarely a method to change the world directly, and these worlds often lack NPCs. From Dear Esther onwards, walking simulators often involve isolation. Even where NPCs are present, as in Firewatch, interactions with them take place at a distance. I feel like you're comparing apples to oranges here, and the world feels awfully dead, doesn't it? Like the rapture happened and you're the only one left behind, staring at memories of people instead of the people themselves. Gone Home has almost an eerie atmosphere for no reason due to the lack of actual people and the constant, oddly loud thunderstorm passing by. You walk around an empty home listening to ghosts tell you a story, badly I might add. You don't think that the story could have benefited from like an NPC mom telling you the stories and having your character answer back? You know, making a connection with you? And can you really consider disembodied voices over the radio to be an NPC? Do you ever actually see this character? Last year, 2 excellent free games, North and Off Peak, filled their weird environments with NPCs and interactions led to snippets of dialogue. In both cases, you can use parts of the world and the people in it, but only to peel back the layers of mystery or to find the punchlines buried beneath the collectibles in the case of Off Peak. Playing through that, and you really should if you haven't, I was reminded of jazz punk. The fuck is jazz punk? There, the default action was always a gag, a whoopee cushion, or a pratfall, or something totally unexpected. Everywhere you traveled, you could be sure that clicking the left mouse button would make something happen. And unlike many comedy games, it would be scripted joke rather than some exaggerated clumsy physics. What are you saying? Are you saying that violence in these games need to be replaced with ridiculous slapstick comedy? Because that would really cheapen the illusion of an action drama crime game. The central focus of the kill button increasingly feels like a throwback to a time when games were almost entirely based around violent conflict. As we move into genres beyond action and war, I find the ease with which the character kills stranger and stranger. Sometimes it feels like a crutch, a way to provide a sense of freedom and escapism without reinventing the wheel, and in a way that is so traditional it's rarely questioned. Other times it feels like a way to hold on to the attention of the audience. Taking away their guns is a way of limiting their engagement with the world. Yeah, because limiting a player's engagement is literally taking control away from the player in a game that is meant to be a sandbox. Many games don't stray away from the Grand Theft Auto formula because it works. Why fix what isn't broken? In addition to that, making these games costs a lot of money, like millions. For investors, you want the game to be a sure thing, as in, successful? GTA was successful, so why shouldn't Watch Dogs 2 be? Give me cameras and gestures and handshakes and conversations. Give me a whoopee cushions and pratfalls. I don't want to purge violence from video games, but I want a new defaults where appropriate, or alternatives at the very least. Not every open world has to be a Zack Snyder's Metropolis. I want to play in a world where the lives of the NPCs matter, even when they're not starring in a cutscene. Then you should be actively seeking those games instead of complaining about how a successful game doesn't cater to you. Shine a spotlight on those guys and say, hey, I found this cool game and it's completely different than the other things I played this year. Maybe do that instead. Hell, I'll do it for you. Lately I've been playing a game called Valhalla. What is it? It's basically a bartending simulator with a large cast of interesting characters. Make your patrons stupid drunk and listen to their stories. If you need an incentive, I'll tell you about one of the characters. The owner of the Valhalla bar is a woman with a robotic arm, which she may or may not have lost wrestling 10 bears, and then freeing them in an underground fight club type of thing. It's got good music too. I recommend it.